Hey team, hope you're well. Today I'm going to take you through a bit of a win I've had recently. This happened kind of late last year in 2025, where I was effectively able to secure what I like to call a free house. I wasn't personally the one that bought this property, but I was the one that found the deal, and I wasn't actually in a position to buy it, and I referred it to a friend of mine that wanted to take on the deal and was in a position to do so. So I'm going to break through the numbers for it. It was a really unique scenario, and I haven't really been able to find an opportunity like this in the last 12 months, and I want to take through the story. And I also obviously want to clarify again what I mean by a free house, because like obviously if you're buying a property in New Zealand and you're going to get finance for it, obviously there's going to be some commitments with the deposit and stuff. So I want to just clarify again before proceeding with the video, just so you're fully aware of what I mean by that. So effectively a free house, what I determine it from this definition of what I'm going to explain in this video, is that you are able to buy a property where you were able to go to another bank and get your deposit back in full for what your original deposit was. So for example, in this scenario I'm going to share, I think the deposit for the friend that I referred this deal to might have been around 40 grand. So within a certain amount of time, there's a solution where they can get that 40 grand back quite fast, so they can get the deposit back in full, so they could use that cash again if they need to. So that's one requirement of like being free. So you basically get your money back from what you put in. And the other thing as well, after you get that money back and say increase your lending, which I'll explain how this all works, is that the future lending can cover all of your obligations to service that property as well. So I'll go a bit more into detail with what I mean by that. So technically, like depending on your definition of it, it's not necessarily a free house, but this scenario is next to impossible to achieve, at least from my point of view in the last 12 months of being able to find a property like this. But I'll go through the scenario of what the metrics of the deal were, because I think it's pretty fascinating, and I can't necessarily guarantee you'll find a deal similar to this, but I want to just go through the concept of how I found this, things I analyzed, and maybe showcase my ability. Maybe if I'm your advisor, I can analyze things and go into detail, like I will in this video. So just a bit of a disclosure there on that. So let's get into the deal a little bit. I won't go so into specifics with some things, but I'll be as transparent as I possibly can with it. So the person I referred this deal to, I passed it on to them at a value of $222,000. So that was their purchase price. Now the bank valuations for this property were between $320,000 to $330,000 at the time. So what this means is, in the event that, say, maybe in six months' time, there could be an option where this online valuation could be presented to a main bank, and that could be what is used in an application. I probably will go a little bit more into context and detail for that in a second, but basically the banks were valuing it at more than what I was buying the property for. Also on sites like real estate .co.nz and One Roof, all of those sites, they had the valuation sitting around the $300,000. There was a bit of an unfortunate circumstance for the person selling this property. I think they were getting a little bit behind on their repayments and credit, and they had to sell, and I was just at the right place at the right time to secure this deal. I was a bit gutted I couldn't buy the property personally, but it all worked out where like I could refer it to somebody else, and I had the connections and context to do that. So it all worked out, and then we agreed on a price at this. So I'm going to go through the deal at this price for the rest of the scenario and just give a bit more insight. So furthermore, breaking down the numbers of how the person I referred this to was able to do this deal is this is the purchase price 222 for legal costs or valuations. I put it 2,500. I think in this scenario there wasn't a valuation needed in their situation. Their deposit, they secured this property through a non-bank lender. So they were able to get it with a little bit less than a 30% deposit, which is generally the requirement if you're buying an existing property as an investment. So the deposit, if I take 20% of the purchase price, this is probably the deposit they had with the non-bank solution they went with to secure this property. So this was roughly what the loan amount was to secure this deal for them. So the interest rate, I don't actually know roughly what it is. I suspect it was probably around 6.5 to 7%. So in the scenario when they're buying this property, this is probably the short term of what the repayments will be. It won't necessarily be the long term, because the idea with this property is to get a solution with a main bank lender. The short term lender was just there to enable them to buy this property at the time, because it was quite a quick turnaround required. And they also didn't have to put 30% deposit into the deal. So that was them justifying the deal further. Weekly rental income for this property. So it was already tenanted to getting $480 per week, and it still is at the moment, a few months down the line. There is some work to be done to this property, in the sense there's I think some windows that need to be upgraded, and some other maintenance and general stuff. I haven't put any renovation costs in here because with the scenario, like it's already tenanted, it's healthy homes compliant, but there will be probably some ongoing maintenance needed for this, maybe over the long term for like those windows and maybe some maintenance to the roof as well, or maybe a new roof is actually needed down the line potentially too in the next 5-10 years. But I'm not going to include that in here for now. But let's move on from that. So annual expenses, these are the figures I'm going to use. So for them having it as an investment property, I've got an accountant fee of $500 per year for an accountant to do their books on that one. Insurance and rates, I've got these figures here. I can't remember roughly off the top of my head, guys, but I feel like this is probably pretty fair for the property they're buying. Repairs and maintenance, I put 1% of the property's value per year, 2,200. Could be a little bit more, but I will put it in there. 8% for a property manager. This was actually the exact fee I remember the property manager was charging. So in this scenario, in the short term, obviously, like I said earlier, this won't be their long-term rate necessarily. Rates may go up over the next 6, 12, 18 months potentially. So it may be a little bit higher than where the banks are having their rates right now. I probably will do a forecast shortly of like what it will be once it goes to the main banks. But right here, in this scenario, when they did settle on the property, it was effectively cash flow neutral. Like this here, apparently $2 net per week in this scenario for them with a 20% deposit. So in that regard, it's self-sustaining to an extent. There might be some immediate maintenance that maybe needed to be done here and there, but I don't think they've actually done any work to it in the 5-6 months that they've had the property. So anyway, in this scenario on a higher rate, it's actually cash flow neutral to begin with. But the idea with this is that if I go to the scenario now, in the event that they can explain to a lender that they've been able to source it under market value, all the comparable sales are around this range, and a main bank is happy to use this valuation, now they will be able to lend up to 70% of this valuation. Okay, so at the time of when the property was bought, they were sitting here. Maybe they will change. Like this is part of the risk of buying a property. These things can change. Maybe the property market declines and maybe there's some comparable sales that are sort of similar to what they have ended up securing the property for here. But I'm going to do the scenario of just $320,000 here of something they might be able to do, say 6 months or 1 year down the line when they're trying to approach maybe a main bank lender and get a better solution on their interest rate than what they have with this non-bank lender. Okay, so 70% of 320,000 is $224,000. Okay, so they might be able to say, look, we can prove we can service this additional debt. We want to have this as our new lending against this property. So we want to take out $47,000 because that's the difference between what their existing lending is here. If I take it here, this is their existing lending right now with having a 20% deposit. If I go back here, that enables them to take out up to $47,000 to maybe look at buying another property. Now, when they initially did their deposit, their cash deposit was $44,000. So in this scenario, if this is approved and this is the valuation, they could actually get all of their money back to do this. Obviously, it would mean they're increasing their lending. So their future lending would be like this. So the expected loan amount, let's have a look what it would be, $224,000. Okay, so let's use that sum and refine these numbers now. So purchase price $320. They may need a lawyer to do the refinance to a main bank lender. Cash deposit is irrelevant in this scenario, but basically I'll do the sum based on this loan amount here. Now the new interest rate is probably going to range somewhere between 4.5% to 5%, depending on what rate they go with and how they structure this debt moving forward. I'll have it on interest only as well, just to show it being an investment property. I think that's pretty fair to use. $480 per week. Still the same rent. Maybe there's actually the opportunity for them to increase the rent as well. I'll keep the same figures displayed here in the scenario before, but in the scenario, you can see here it's actually still self-sustaining with that increase of debt, increasing the debt by $47,000 here. So it would actually be on just, net cash flow per week of $3.62. So basically in this scenario, it's ticking the parameters of a free house, right? Because they get their deposit back in full, they put 44 grand into the deal, and they can get 47 grand back out. They can increase their lending to 224 in the scenario that this is okay. And the future lending as well is going to cover all of their debt obligations, right? So in theory, it's actually technically a free house. They get all their money back and the property is going to pay for itself in the scenario, right? I haven't been exposed to any scenario like that where that is actually like a realistic possibility based on where they sit. Maybe as well, like there might be opportunity for them to renovate the property further. Maybe they can get a valuation even higher than this, and they could withdraw even more to enable themselves more funds to go buy another property potentially. It's all theoretical. Like maybe this can't be done, and there is risk to consider. But yeah, like this aspect of being able to buy a free house is like basically obsolete, like I said earlier in the video. But it was a bit of a win that I found and had. I kind of really wish I would have been able to buy this property, but I guess that's the beauty of property as well. Like there are other deals that will come up, and hopefully there's more of these like free house opportunities that are there. But I wanted to just showcase that one today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. If you do have a property you want me to analyze and have a look at as well from my point of view, I'll leave all of my stuff in the description, and I'll also leave some videos on the screen if you want to check out some other videos I made that might be helpful for you. Cheers, guys.